right, welcome to the first episode of Slept on Sports. I am Connor Groel.
I'm Brevin Fleischer.
Brandon Schaff.
Mike Tyrrell.
And we are all graduate journalism students at Northwestern. On this podcast, we share interesting, lesser-known sports stories you could say have been slept on.
Nice.
I know.
Sounds sick.
I know. We have no idea what each other will talk about, so hopefully all of us and you, the listener, will learn something new today. It's really that simple. Guys, who wants to go first?
You got it. You take it away.
All right.
Hey, you're the host.
Okay.
The host with the most.
Sure thing. So
Here we go.
today we are going to be talking about how arguably the greatest defense in NFL history missed the playoffs.
I'm looking forward to this
Missed the
argument.
playoffs entirely.
I'm looking forward to this
85 Bears.
Jeez,
Like,
you gotta go back.
Well, we will talk about the 85 Bears.
I
I think the
that's what I'm saying.
the Super Bowl.
That's the greatest
I
defense.
think the
True,
2000
true.
Ravens have an argument. But
So-
Wait. What about the Legion of Boom?
So today we will be talking about the 1977 Atlanta Falcons.
Oh, wow.
Now hear me out on this one. The Falcons are a franchise known for blowing leads. We've seen it in the Super Bowl up 28-3. We've even seen it this season. They were up 15 against the Cowboys with 5 minutes left, then forgot the onside kick rules, lost it in regulation. The next week they led 26-10 against the Bears, and they also lost that game in regulation after Nick Foles threw 3 touchdown passes. So this is a team really known for blowing leads. But in 1977, blowing leads was not the issue because in 14 games, the Falcons allowed just 129 points. That is 9.2 points per game.
Jeez. That's a problem.
Yeah, and that is the fewest points per game allowed by any defense in the Super Bowl era. For comparison, Brev, since you were talking about the 85 Bears,
Yep.
a lot of people think that's the greatest defense of all time. They allowed 12.4 points per game
Scrubs.
in the regular season compared to this Falcons team, just 9.2. Now, of course, there's more to defense than just points allowed, but by this metric, they are the greatest defense in NFL history in the Super Bowl era. But of course, they still missed the playoffs. And this was not a situation where they won 10 games, but like 5 different teams won 10 games, so they got, unlucky in the wild card. This is a team that only finished 7-7. They went 500 with the greatest scoring defense in the Super Bowl era.
How does that even happen?
Well, let me tell you exactly how that happened. First, I want to tell you that this was not a team with high expectations. This team was not supposed to have a good defense at all. They played their first season in 1966. That's 11 years before this season. And in those 11 seasons, they had never made the playoffs. Not a single time had the Atlanta Falcons made the playoffs. And they are coming off a 4-10 season where they had just the 22nd best scoring defense out of 28 teams. So this is a bad team with a bad defense. They enter with 100-1 Super Bowl odds, tied for the 3rd worst in the whole league. This is a team that's supposed to be terrible. Not supposed to be good at all, and then somehow they come up with this miracle defensive performance. So let's start talking about the season. In week 1, the Falcons stunned the LA Rams 17-6, okay? The Rams are one of the Super Bowl favorites. This is a team that goes on to win the Falcons division in this season. So this is a big win for them right off the jump, okay? In week 2, they do lose 10-6 to the Redskins, but they rebound. 2 weeks later, they find themselves 3-1. Against all odds. This team's looking really good. Defense, stellar. The offense, it's a bit of a problem. They still have not scored more than 17 points in a single game. But, just 4 weeks into the season, not cause for concern just yet. Obviously, we're still 3-1. Week 5, on the other hand, is where we start to worry. Okay, week 5, the Falcons are playing an 0-4 Bills team, and they lose the game 3-0.
Oh.
Come on now.
3-0.
I don't think I've ever seen a score that's 3-0.
Oh, this is 2-0.
OJ,
Yeah,
there you
go.
OJ, and I don't think that's happened since about the 1920s. So we have OJ Simpson rushes for 138 yards for the Bills. Has himself a good game, but the Bills can't, get into the end zone. They're not really moving down the field either. Hardly any passing yards. And the game ends 3-0. The Falcons get blanked again by a winless Bills team. In the 43 years since that game was played, there have only been 4 more games that have ended 3-0. So an incredibly rare final score. 3-0 they lose to this game. Let's skip forward a few weeks to week 8. They play the 49ers. The 49ers offense has just 97 total yards for the entire game.
Wow.
The entire game, they hold them under 100 yards, and the Falcons lose 10-3. This is a team, the defense is carrying as hard as they possibly can.
This is pre-fantasy football, right?
Yes, I think the first leagues,
that's a weapon right there.
It's a big defense. Yeah,
They're forcing turnovers?
Yeah. They finished the season second in turnovers forced in the whole league.
That'd be a steal. Imagine getting the Falcons, you pick them up after week one.
Number one scoring defense. Number 2 in total yards allowed. Number 1 in passing defense. They allow less than 100 passing yards per game.
Well, it looks like
for the entire season.
Well, it looks like when they played the Bears and the Vikings in Week 6 and Week 7, they have 5 turnovers in both games.
Yes.
They have 10 turnovers in 2 weeks.
They force or they commit?
They forced 10 turnovers.
Yeah, this is a team.
That's a league winner on defense.
Like, they're all over it on defense.
Wow. Well,
it's incredible.
I guess it does go to show, though, that if you don't win, it does not matter how great the defensive statistics are.
Well, exactly. So let's talk about how bad the offense was. Because obviously this is the greatest scoring defense and one of the greatest overall defenses that we've ever seen. But for the season on offense, they score just 12.8 points per game.
That's not good.
That's not good.
No.
In fact, it's very bad.
And they're still outscoring their defense by 3 points. That still should be better than 7-7.
Yes, so we'll get to that as well. So they're scoring 12.8 points per game. They're allowing 9.2 points per game. But their offense ranks 25th out of 28. So one of the worst offenses in the league. They score more than 20 points in a game one time. Just once. In their losses, the games they lose, their defense is allowing fewer than 14 points per game. And that's in all the games they lose. In wins, they're allowing just like 4.6 points per game. So it's ridiculous. So the offense is completely inept. The defense is fantastic, but they are unlucky because, as you mentioned, they're scoring 3.5 points about per game more than they allow. So according to Pro Football Reference, this team's expected record was 9.6 and 4-4. So just based off their offensive and defensive scoring, you would expect this team to win 9 or 10 games, but they only win 7 games. And 9 games would have got you a wild card berth in this season. So if things shake out a little luckier for them, maybe they would have made the playoffs, but not in this case. With the best scoring defense in NFL history, they missed the playoffs. So I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
So this was the best scoring defense. How much further down the list of the best scoring defenses would you have to go to find a team that did not finish with a winning record?
50.
112.
130.
130. You have to go all the way down to the 78th best defense.
Oh, man.
It's the 1993 Chicago Bears. A team that allowed
very mediocre.
A team that allowed 14.4 points per game.
Yeah.
So there is not a single team in the Super Bowl era that allowed within 5 points per game of this Falcons team that did not finish with a winning record. And the Falcons go 7-7. Now, very funny. They're a very unlucky team this year. This will be my last point on this. Let's go briefly talk about the 1978 Falcons, the team that comes afterwards. Okay? This is still a team that's terrible on offense. They finished just 26th out of 28 teams in terms of points per game. But now they're only an average defensive team. Now they're allowing more than 18 points per game. So just about double the amount that they allowed a season prior. Now, using the same metric from Pro Football Reference, the expected record of the 1978 Falcons, 6.2 wins, 9.8 losses. You know how they actually finished? They finished 9-7, and for the first time in franchise history, the Atlanta Falcons make the playoffs.
That's insane. But I think the craziest thing that you said there was when you were talking about they average like 12 points per game.
Yes.
And that was only like 4th worst in the league. And I'm looking at the 2019 stats right now.
Yeah.
The worst offense in the league was Washington with 16.6 points.
Yes.
So it's amazing to think that 12 points per game wasn't even the bottom of the barrel, and it would be by so far the worst offense in the NFL in modern era.
So this is actually crazy because this is 1977 we're talking about.
Yeah.
For 1978, they change a lot of rules to make it friendlier towards the passing. There's 2 more games, but they do change some rules to make it friendlier towards the passing offense. The 1977 season featured the fewest points per game on average of any season since World War II.
Wow.
Wow.
See, it's interesting because you talk about this Falcons team being so great with their defense, and you just presented their stats are just incredible. I always like to think the 2000 Baltimore Ravens were the best defensive team in NFL history. They were just so dominant. But when you look at the fact, it comes down to, can the team have a competent offense? Because we don't, this is the reason why we're bringing up the Falcons, that they're not remembered in history because they ended up being awful. Like went 7-7.
7-7.
The 2000 Baltimore Ravens ended up winning the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Their overall offense was 14th out of 31. So with Trent Dilfer as quarterback, who we see today on NFL Countdown, on ESPN all the time, we kind of think, oh, Trent Dilfer, he's cool. But like, he was not a great quarterback.
No.
Right.
But that offense was still like middle of the road. This Falcons offense was 25th out of 28. They were actually horrific. And if you look at the game, for example, just picking a random game here, week 12, when they played the Patriots that they lost in, they forced 3 turnovers. And normally you think, oh, forcing 3 turnovers, that's going to give you an opportunity to win. They committed 5 turnovers in that game.
I know.
So this Falcons offense is actually pretty horrific when you look at it. And the Ravens offense, people make fun of that Ravens offense, Trent Dilfer, they weren't good. They were actually pretty decent. So I think at the end of the day...
Dilfer was only half the season, though.
So I think if this,
I think Banks was just as bad.
but
Right. I mean, they were not good.
No.
And I think the point stands. If this Falcons team had even an average offense, they probably would have won 10, 11 games. I mean, we saw the 3-0 loss, the 10-3 loss to the Niners. There are a few other losses. They do force, and I don't remember the full numbers, but something like 50 turnovers in 14 games, which is insane.
Wow.
I mean, the Super Bowl champions that year, the Cowboys, you'd wonder if the Falcons got a chance to play them in the playoffs, how that would end up going.
It wouldn't go well. It wouldn't go well.
At some
There's
point.
no offense.
At some point, you
I
got to
mean,
score
you need
the
an
ball.
offense to do anything in the playoffs.
True. I mean, I would trust Roger Staubach to be able to figure it out at the end of the day, but it'd be very curious to see how they would perform in a playoff game.
True.
But because their offense was so inept, it kind of debilitated their opportunity to do anything in that situation.
And like you saw in their first game against the Rams, which ended up being a very good team. This was a team that on any given Sunday they could beat anyone because they can blank teams. They blanked a couple teams in this season, but when it comes down to it, over the course of a full year, the offense was just too terrible for even the greatest defense to do much of anything.
And it's also interesting because you make the point, like this Falcons defense was so great, right? They only gave up 129 points all season. Brevin, I think, said the 85 Bears, right?
Yeah.
They gave up 198 points in that season. Now, they had 2 more games, so you have to understand that as well. But also, something that people may not understand, that 85 Bears team, they actually scored the second most points in the NFL.
That's a really good point.
So, you had McMahon playing quarterback, and people make fun of him and everything.
No, but do you know why? Do you know why they scored all those points?
Well,
Because Walter Payton.
They had
Right.
Walter
That's
Payton,
the only
obviously.
reason.
They had Walter
Jim
Payton.
McMahon was probably one of the most average quarterbacks ever.
Well, that's a whole Bears issue. You have average quarterbacks.
That is a very
can't play the game.
Oh yeah,
It is an unfortunate reoccurring theme. But it's been like that forever.
and it's still like that
But
now.
I'm making the point for Connor here is that this 77 Falcons team was really good statistically, and they had no backup from the offense.
Yeah.
Like, you think of the 85 Bears, you think of the defense. Their offense was the second. They were averaging almost 29 points a game in 85. Like, they
That's
were
the thing
really good.
but that's the thing that's crazy to me about this Falcons thing, because if you're getting 50 turnovers, you're probably getting really good field position, because that's part of the reason that the 85 Bears were able to score. I mean, they're getting the ball back,
That's also
wherever they want on the field. Like, if you're forcing 50 turnovers and still can only put 9 points
And
per
I bet
game,
that defense is scoring some points.
you're right.
For the Bears and probably this Falcons team, although I'm not positive on that.
Although, and I'm looking right now, because you got me curious looking at these 1977 stats. The Tampa Bay Bucks scored 103 points the entire year, 7.4 points per game.
Now you do have to realize
That's
that
a little ridiculous.
the Bucks were a 76 expansion team.
Yeah, but
So they went
still.
winless their first year, and I think they won maybe 1 game this season.
Well, yeah, the Bucks were terrible.
Yeah.
But,
But
Okay,
yeah,
well,
it was
wait.
a strangely low year for offense.
Think
for
about
sure.
this stuff. Think about how prolific the Falcons' offense was when Matt Ryan was MVP and they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Add that offense to that defense back in '77.
Well, especially that passing offense.
Oh my gosh, you could argue that is one of the greatest teams
Well, the
statistically on both ends.
Well, the league
that
had
the
never
NFL's
seen anything
ever
like it.
seen. Exactly. So that just goes to show how good you have to be.
I mean, it's hard to believe that they would give up only 9 points a game. Like that's we look at today. Crazy. Today's the era of fantasy. Today's the era of adding up. People want to see points. So I wonder if this Falcons team is only giving up 9 points a game. I wonder if people would actually be, because the Super Bowl a couple years ago when the Patriots played the Rams, people hated that Super Bowl because of the defenses. But you can make the argument the defenses were actually pretty good in that Super Bowl and the offenses were bad. But it was a defensively solid Super Bowl. You wonder though if this Falcons team was around today. I honestly don't think that people would be interested in them because they're not providing excitement. No one wants to see 9 points a game given up. People want to see shootouts.
Which is why they changed the rules in future seasons. And this year we're having an explosion. So far, it's 26 points a game or something ridiculous the teams are having.
And I'm looking at this the stats for 1977. The Falcons have the third best point differential in the NFC.
Yeah.
They have the third best point differential in the entire conference. And they don't make the playoffs. That eventually it's just your luck is terrible.
Well, that's prolific.
Washington had a point differential of 7, and they were 9-5.
Plus 7.
Minnesota 4, Chicago 2, Atlanta 50.
And those are all playoff teams.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Let me also just bring up, this is unrelated, but connected to everything because I'm going to be talking about something another team in this situation, but. It's just so great looking at the NFL standings in 1977 because you only have 3 divisions, AFC East, AFC Central, AFC West, and then the same for the NFC. That was beautiful. You look at the NFC Central, the Vikings, Bears, Lions, Packers, Buccaneers. What division is that?
It's crazy,
that's insane. Or in the AFC Central, you've got the Steelers and the Oilers in the same division. The Seahawks used to be in the AFC.
That's right.
So it's kind of interesting.
And there's different numbers of teams in each one. The NFC West has 4 teams.
Right.
The AFC Central has 4 teams, but the NFC Central has 5 teams, and the AFC West has 5 teams.
Yeah.
It's like the NHL right now. It's just all a little convoluted.
Yeah. And Baltimore has a team, but it's not the Ravens; it's the Colts.
That's right.
So this is very interesting. But this Falcons
and the team that is the Ravens at this point is being called the Cleveland Browns.
That's right. And they came in last again.
That checks out.
But this is a great team to talk about. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen. On NFL Network, they talk about greatest teams ever, and they never bring up this Falcons team, who their defense statistically is just absolutely incredible. Yeah. But look, if you're going to go 7-7 and not even make the playoffs, no one's going to give a crap who you are because it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's a big difference. That's always
so 77 Falcons.
Well, Mike, did you
greatest scoring defense NFL history, missing the playoffs?
That's amazing. And did Mike, you say you were doing something a little bit similar to that?
Yeah, I was. So let's fast forward almost 20 years from now. Okay, so we're moving ahead, right? We're leaving the era of Jimmy Carter in the late 70s, and we're entering the era of Bill Clinton in the late 90s, both Democrats. And I have an interesting team here, which is it's almost the opposite of the Falcons in terms of this offense was one of the greatest offenses that the NFL has ever seen before probably the Patriots in 07. But there is a similar...
Patriots in 07, how'd that end?
I'm sorry, Mr.
I mean, I have no connection here. I don't care.
No skin in the game, man.
Pulling the Super Bowl 42 card.
Brevin's a Giants fan, so he's going to enjoy it.
I think we'll be pulling that card more than a few times.
I'm glad that he can enjoy it at that time because there's nothing to enjoy right now.
I mean, Mitch Trubisky, Patrick Mahomes. I just thought
good thing.
That is for
good thing for Nick Foles.
So, Mike, what is your team?
All right, so my team is the 1998 Minnesota Vikings. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is one of the most exciting teams in NFL history, but people have kind of forgotten about them because ultimately they did not even get to the Super Bowl. They went 15-1 in this season. They were NFC Central champions. They were the number 1 seed in the playoffs. We just talked about the NFC Central. We just talked about the divisions being a little bit different at the time. In 1998, when they had won 15 games, they were only the 3rd team in NFL history to win 15 games in the regular season. Now, obviously, playing 16 games in a season was kind of a novelty. Up until that point, there had not been so many seasons up until then that had been played with 16 games. But they were the first team to win 15 games and not even make the Super Bowl. Their head coach, let me give you a hint.
Okay.
This is someone that you guys know. Okay, you've probably seen memes of him, stories about him. Okay. Brandon, your team is in this little discussion. They are who we thought they were.
It's gonna be Dennis Green.
You remember Dennis Green?
No.
The Bears are who we thought they are. We let him off the hook.
Oh, God.
One of the most famous press conferences of all
Revolt my
time.
Bears card.
That's why they took the damn field.
That's right.
That is disappointing.
He was the coach of the Vikings at this time.
It's just cruel.
Okay.
So, like,
Wow.
he gets
Yeah.
roasted today, but he actually was overseeing a team that was one of the most statistically greatest offenses ever. The offensive coordinator, though, Brian Billick.
Oh, wow.
What's he famous for? Brian Billick.
Give me the info.
I keep forgetting that I'm like 5 years older than you guys. So
That's
like, you guys
also
might not
true. This is
remember
outdated.
stuff.
Wait, are you
Oh my
saying
God.
that this man was a coach for the Bears?
No.
This guy before?
Right? He was just talking about. He was referencing.
I was just
this
talking
in the
about
last
this team
segment.
that he was actually. So Brian Billick's the offensive coordinator for the Vikings in '98. 2 years later, he becomes the head coach of a very famous team that I
He was
just
just
mentioned.
talking about him 2 years later, 2000.
That actually becomes known for their defense as opposed to their offense.
Okay.
He's an offensive guru, but he ends up becoming the head coach of one of the greatest defense of all time.
But as you said, pretty solid offense too.
They were still actually not that bad,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The 2000 Baltimore Ravens. So Brian Billick becomes the head coach of the Ravens a couple years later, but he is the offensive coordinator of the Vikings in the year 1998. Okay? Now, throughout the entire season, and 1998, as I continue to research this year, is actually one of the most fascinating NFL seasons that I can actually remember, and I think that I will revisit this particular season in future podcasts because it's absolutely insane. But the Denver Broncos, led by John Elway, they were the defending champions coming into the season.
Right.
And the expectation was that they were going to repeat going into this year, which they ended up
Which they
doing.
do, yeah.
Spoiler alert, okay? But
Sorry, guys, if you haven't watched the 1998 season yet.
if you guys,
I mean, guys, it's been 22 years.
NFL Network
you
has
never
some
know.
Super Bowl tapes for you
Well,
had-
to
during
peruse.
coronavirus, that's all people have been watching.
That is true.
That's right.
But the Vikings team came into the season. I'm going to give you this offense. Okay, it is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, the quarterback, 35 years old, Randall Cunningham.
Randall Cunningham.
Okay, he is obviously, you know,
right.
I grew up in Philadelphia.
After the Eagles
so
days.
Eagles fans love Randall, right? He's had some unbelievable moments. But he's 35 in 1998. Look at his stats. He throws for 3,700 yards.
Yeah.
34 touchdowns
That's a lot.
as a 35.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well,
Well, the thing with
who is he
Ran-
throwing to though?
Well, the
Let
thing
me
with
tell you,
and
yeah,
the-
he's throwing some guys.
Let's not, you know, completely
Like give all the
ruin this moment
all the
here.
credit to Randall.
Well, let's
but
give
he's
the credit to
throwing
Randall
some guys.
Cunningham because he
Yes.
did. He started out as one of the first really mobile quarterbacks, and he does. By the end of his career, he develops into one of the greatest passing quarterbacks. So a lot of credit to him, but like you will say, he had some good receivers.
All right, guys.
All right, so yeah, I mean, well, first of all, his running back's Robert Smith.
Yeah, solid.
Prime of his career, 26 years old, The Ohio State University. Okay, he
Oh, you
ran
had
for.
to add the D.
Trademark the
I mean,
V.
hey.
I mean, you can't leave it out.
Oh, for crying out loud.
So he rushes for 1,187 yards,
All right.
6 touchdowns. Not bad.
Yeah.
But look at the receiving core that Randall Cunningham has the privilege,
All right, go ahead.
the privilege of throwing to. Chris Carter.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's not bad, right?
He's not bad.
33 at the
He's a
time.
good. He's a good number 2 receiver.
He's not bad, right? I think he's Hall of Fame, although
He
you
is.
might correct
Oh,
me
he
if I'm
is.
right.
No, he is. He's the Hall of
He's
Famer.
Chris
Chris Carter, that's
I'm being
right.
sarcastic. He's Hall of Fame, right?
Yes.
That season, he had 12 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards, 78 catches. And then there's someone that,
Can't remember.
I don't know if I've heard of this person before.
Yeah.
I'm struggling though. His name is Randy. Randy Moss.
Oh.
Randy.
Oh, right.
Ding, ding, ding,
That's
ding.
right, Randy Moss.
Yeah.
I have heard of him before.
I do think he's come up 1 or 2 times. I think he was on a really good offense later in his
Yeah,
career.
wait a second.
They must have won the Super Bowl.
Could be.
They must have won the Super Bowl
All right, well, let's
with
not
an
talk
offense
about
that amazing, right?
Yeah.
With Randy Moss.
Wait, is Randy Moss in the Hall of Fame?
With
Oh.
Tom Brady?
He is.
Tom Brady was on that team.
He was.
Wow.
Well,
You would have
anyway.
thought Tom Brady with an undefeated team would have won the Super Bowl.
I mean, there must have been just those 2 guys. It couldn't have had any other firepower.
No, not at all.
I'm just gonna sit here and not enjoy the Giants.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We've hijacked your story with the
No,
Giants.
it's fine. But Randy Moss
Propaganda.
in '98, he's 21 years old.
Okay.
Fresh out. He
Yeah.
wins Rookie of the Year, just in case you didn't know. He's in the Hall of Fame now. Okay, obviously. He scored 17 touchdowns this season, which was the
As
most
a
for a
rookie.
rookie at the
Oh,
time.
God.
This offense scored an NFL record of 556 points during the regular
556.
season.
That's a
Okay?
lot.
That was actually, and now you think, oh, these NFL teams, they score points all the time. This was the first 500-point offense in a regular season since the '83 Redskins.
Wow.
So we're talking about 15 years.
And this
I think you mean to say the Washington football team?
Yes, by the time the Redskins. Yes, I understand.
And this was not 502 points. You said 556?
556. That's correct. They never scored less than 24 points in a game.
That's amazing.
Never scored less than 24 points.
I don't think my Atlanta Falcons ever hit 24.
No, I don't think they came close.
No. They'd be lucky if they scored 10. Sorry.
In fact, 12 of their games that they played, they won more than 10 points. So they beat teams by more than 10 points in 12 of those 16 games that they played. They only lost one game in Week 9 to the Buccaneers, 27-24. One of their most famous games was on Thanksgiving Day when they beat the Cowboys in prime time on Thanksgiving. This is back when they only had 2 games on Thanksgiving. 46-36. They beat the Cowboys in Jerry World, even though it was the old Jerry World at the time. Randy Moss in this game, this is not a typo, 163 yards, 3 touchdowns. How many catches did he have? Guess. He had 3 touchdowns, 163 yards.
4 catches.
Very close. He had 3 catches.
3 catches.
3 were touchdowns.
Oh my God.
That is miraculous.
And what I'm saying is that game, that day, that Thanksgiving Day, that's what I'm saying the 98 season is so insane because that game was the later game.
That's amazing.
The game before that was Steelers-Lions when Jerome Bettis messed up the coin toss. And that ruined their chances of going to the playoffs. So actually that Thanksgiving Day of 1998 was actually pretty ridiculous. You had the scandal with the Steelers earlier, and then you had Randy Moss just absolutely owning the Vikings, and that was when he started mossing people for the first time ever. But another key figure on this team that will come up much later, his name is Gary Anderson.
That's right.
He is 39 years old. Jeez. He is the kicker of this football team. He is the first place kicker in NFL history to make every kick during the regular season. He was 35 for 35 from field goals, and he was 59 from 59 for extra points.
Speaking of a fantasy weapon right there.
Why does
That's beautiful.
He had the one bar.
That's a difference.
He had the one bar.
That is a difference.
That's right. Why do I feel like this might be important later?
Yeah, because it's not going to end well for him. All right, so quickly, okay, this team just dominates during the regular season, right? And everyone's talking about the Broncos being so good with John Elway. The Broncos started 13-0. Okay, they were cruising to match that Dolphins team, but they lost a late game to the Giants of all teams.
Why of all teams? I think it would have been the obvious team.
This is in between Phil Simms and Eli. So this is kind of where we are now with the Giants. They were horrific, right? So the Broncos lost, and then they gave up the next week, and they ended up winning Week 17. So the Broncos went 15-2. So the Vikings were actually the best team in the regular season. They were 15-1. And so everyone thought it was going to be Vikings, Broncos, in the Super Bowl, the best offense the league has ever seen, right? Against the Broncos, the defending champions with John Elway, who everybody knew this was going to be his last season. This was going to be his swan song. This was going to be it.
And you're talking a 14-win team versus a 15-win team. That's got to be the best records for a Super Bowl matchup of all time.
You would think, right? Absolutely, right? And
I think it would have been.
It would have been. Everyone thought that was going to be it. And so the Vikings got that first round bye, which everybody expected, right? So they won in the divisional playoffs. They beat the Cardinals 41-21.
Wow.
Give the Cardinals credit. This is the Cardinals of the NFC East Cardinals.
That's right. That's right.
Which I don't think a lot of people give them credit for because the Cardinals would have to travel across the country a couple times a season. They'd have to play in Philly. They'd have to play in Washington. They'd play in New York.
To be fair, it's a little ridiculous that the Cowboys are in the division now.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's true. The NFC East, I don't think Dallas is in the East. But
side note on the Cardinals, looking at them now, 9-7, point differential of -53. How does that happen?
Jake Plummer, right?
The 77 Falcons are in misery.
Yeah, they're punching the air right now.
This team doesn't get in. Meanwhile, we get this Cardinals -50 point differential. But this just shows you how the NFL changes in these 15 years.
And to be fair, I think who makes it in from the NFC East this season will have a -50 point differential.
Well, they might have a
and they'll win the division.
Might be -100.
Honestly, I don't trust any team coming from the NFC East this season. Makes this Cardinal team look actually good. So the Vikings are in the NFC Championship, and this is where the story gets going.
Okay.
So they're playing the Falcons at home. The Falcons, guess what record the Falcons are that season? You just talked about the 77 Falcons?
I'm looking at it right now, so I will abstain.
Well, you know, Brevin.
Yeah.
Well, you're making it out like this is not a good team.
Oh, this is a very good
Quite the
team.
This is a very good team.
Quite the opposite.
This is
How many-
another
how
team
many
that
wins?
was unknown.
You're talking 12, 13 wins?
They won 14-2.
14 and 2.
It was a top heavy. It was a top heavy.
How are there this many amazing
Look at
teams?
this is why the 98 season, I'm telling you, I'm going to revisit this season in the future. The Vikings are 15-1. The Broncos are 14-2, and they're the defending champs. The Falcons are 14-2. Could you imagine going 14-2?
And there's 2 12-4 teams.
Yes. Could you imagine going 14-2
And not being the one seed?
getting home field? Like we complain about the
What
Saints.
a difference!
Right, the Saints last year went 13-3, and there was complaints that they didn't get a home playoff game.
Yeah.
Falcons went 14-2, they get the second seed. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
And so this Falcons team was actually really good. If you look at the statistics, they were the 4th best offense in the NFL. They scored 442 points. So the Falcons' offense was actually pretty good. That season, they had the 4th best defense. I believe the Vikings had like the 6th best defense. So it's like a good matchup here.
I will tell you this, just because it's Falcons-Vikings. The Falcons and Vikings are playing this week, and they're a combined 1-9.
I will say it is not the same allure that existed in 1999.
And in this season, they go 29-3.
Yes.
Jeez.
That is true. So when they play, where's the game this weekend? If it's in Minnesota, that'll be so hilarious. Because that's what
It is in Minnesota.
Oh!
Well.
Well,
So,
history
a very
repeats
different
itself.
situation. Maybe
Yes.
it might.
The real question.
It might. The Falcons had the 4th best defense too. They had not lost since week 8. Okay,
Wow.
and the Vikings have not lost since week 9. So we're talking about 2 teams that are an incredible winning streak
Have not
right
lost
now.
in 2 or 3 months.
Right, and the Falcons, they had actually the highest turnover differential in the league. They had plus 20 differential. Dan Reeves was the head coach. Quick talk about him. Okay, we make fun of Jeff Fisher.
Right.
That's
Well, of course, 7-9.
Okay?
Yeah, 7-9.
He is tied with Dan Reeves for the most NFL regular season losses in history.
Wow.
So Dan Reeves and Jeff Fisher are identical, but Dan Reeves had a better winning percentage. Jeff Fisher went to the Super Bowl once, that Titans team that went the one yard short. Dan Reeves went to the Super Bowl 4 times. He never won.
That is
Okay, and that
brutal.
includes
Why are we
this season?
Yeah, well, we talk about the Bills all the time. Why is no one talking about this guy?
Dan Reeves, yeah, he's something else. And what's funny is he'll win this game against the Vikings, and he will play the Broncos in the Super Bowl, and that was the team he had lost 3 Super Bowls with. And John Elway was his quarterback.
Yeah.
So he lost 3 Super Bowls with Elway. The whole theme was they could never get it done.
Right.
Then he finally gets to the Super Bowl, and he gets to the Super Bowl again with the Falcons, and who does he lose to?
Elway is getting it done.
John Elway of all people, right?
Yeah.
So what's interesting though is Dan Reeves actually almost died during this season.
That is interesting.
In week 14, doctors, he was having some chest problems.
Okay.
Doctors discovered that
Did they
he had
puncture his chest?
some issues.
This is not a Tyrrod Taylor
That's
situation.
what I'm thinking, Tyrrell Taylor.
That is true. That is fair. But it's a little bit more intense. They discovered multiple blockages in his coronary arteries.
What?
And he needed quadruple bypass
Oh
surgery.
my goodness.
In the middle of the season?
Yes.
Did this
and
man
the doctors,
keep playing?
well, that's the thing. The doctors said when he went to get checked out and they discovered this, they said you were actually a few hours away from a catastrophic heart attack.
Oh.
So if he did not get this checked out in week 14, he may have died.
Wow.
They've repaired it. He's all good. Okay. This team was actually fascinating though because I remember, look, you guys a little bit younger than me, right?
A little bit.
So
Just a
like,
bit.
when did you guys start watching NFL football real quick? When was the first game you remember? What was the first season you remember if you can remember?
I would say it would be like, I remember Eli getting drafted, which is 2004.
I was gonna say
my
for
Lord
me,
heavens.
it is probably, the earliest memory is 2003, 2004-ish.
Jesus. Yeah, about the same. A little after. Bears Colts Super Bowl.
That's 2006.
2006.
Holy smokes!
I know. Before that, I was a young one. I was a young one.
Jeez,
I was
you make me feel really old.
I was more basketball focused to start, and I always have been. But
And when was your first game, Mike? The 1960s?
He remembers the 77 Falcons. Yeah,
I remember the 77.
he had a jersey. He had a jersey of one of those guys.
Yeah.
That's right. I have a 77 Falcons jersey. That's
Yeah.
true. No, my first game was the 97, the Super Bowl Broncos Packers 97-98
Year before.
season. But
Yeah.
the 98 season, I remember most of the season. This is my first season. That's why I kind of also feel an affinity towards this. But I remember watching this Falcons team, and they had a running back, Jamal Anderson, who scored 14 touchdowns this season.
That's an underrated name.
Yes, Jamal Anderson.
Anderson.
And he's famous for doing this dirty bird dance,
Yeah,
where he would
dirty
pretend
bird.
he was a falcon and do the dirty bird. Side note, he was also caught doing public nudity in a 7-Eleven, I think, like a few years later. So that
happens at most 7-Elevens.
That's a problem, though. Yeah. No, nothing good happens at a 7-Eleven after 1 p.m.
1 p.m.
That's early.
I'm sorry.
How early are you going to 7-Eleven? No. Walk me through this. Is 7-Eleven very nice at 9 a.m.?
I stand by it. Nothing happens.
Do you go there?
Nothing good happens at 7-Eleven past 1 a.m.
Is that where you get your coffee?
You get your morning coffee and a hot dog.
I stand by that.
Hot dog.
1 p.m.
No, the chicken burrito.
I mean,
Get the slur.
We're college students. We might be getting the morning coffee at 2 p.m.
Honestly, no. I stand by that. I don't trust anything at 7-Eleven.
They have a good brew of Diet Coke. Honestly, I went there today.
Really, 1 p.m.
Would you expose yourself in 7-Eleven for free Diet Coke?
Oh.
If those of you don't know, Brevin has a Diet Coke addiction where he will drink about 5
addiction
Diet
is such
Asphyxiation.
Addiction's a loaded word.
He will drink
No,
5
no,
Diet
it
Cokes
is. I mean,
in
it's
10
almost an
minutes.
understatement.
I don't think it's strong enough.
An
to be honest.
affinity.
Yeah, that's
an
what I
affinity for Diet Coke for sure.
Definitely. No, you're addicted. Yeah, how many did you have today?
You don't count another man's drinks. That's first of all right? I don't have a second of all, but that's first of all.
Anyway, so back to this. Okay, I'm sure these.
Sidetrack.
I mean, hey, the Vikings were probably drinking Diet Coke because they should not have lost this game.
What?
They were up.
What is the connection?
Their performance is affected
The
greatly by the Diet Coke.
connection is.
What does this have to do with 7-Eleven?
The connection is you should not be drinking Diet Coke if you're trying to hydrate yourself in a sporting event.
Like
That's
Tyrrell,
what
what
it is.
happened in the NFC Championship game?
So, in the NFC Championship game, right, the Vikings are winning throughout. Everyone thinks they're going to the Super Bowl, blah,
Okay.
blah, blah, right? They're up 27-20 late in the fourth quarter. They're driving this historic offense, okay, late in the game. We're under 4 minutes left. They get in the field goal range. My boy, Gary Anderson. Let me remind you.
Brother of Morton.
He's brother of Morton. I'm going to bring up Morton in a second.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You bring up every player in the NFL.
Jesus Christ.
This is a great
We're
story.
getting the full lowdown.
Gary Anderson, right? Let me remind you, he's 35 for 35 from field goals this season. He's 59 for 59 from extra points.
Yeah.
Also, obviously, that's including some of those in the Cardinals game, so he's more than that. But he hasn't missed a kick yet this season. He is kicking a 38-yard field goal.
Chip shot.
He makes this kick. Vikings are up 10. They're in the Super Bowl. Time to have this amazing team versus John Elway. So, naturally, what do you think happens?
He makes it.
So, he misses it, and the whole thing falls apart. The first kick he misses all season, it's over.
This is
Wait,
tragic.
it's over?
It's over, Brandon.
Oh my gosh.
Because guess what happens next? The Falcons drive right down the field. They tie the game, 27-20. They go to overtime. Falcons end up winning 30-27 in overtime. And Connor, the winning kick is kicked by
It's Morton Anderson.
Morton Anderson. Different name.
Who, by the way,
Unrelated.
I just learned via Google search are not related.
They are unrelated. Morton Anderson is from Copenhagen, yeah. So
Yeah, he's from Copenhagen.
He's Scandinavian. Okay, so Morton Anderson kicks it. Morton Anderson's a lefty kicker. Gary Anderson's a righty kicker.
Great point.
Falcons
And that made all the difference.
to the Super Bowl, and the Vikings miss out. And then, in the aftermath, real quick, Broncos beat the Falcons 34-19 in the Super Bowl. Once again, the Broncos were also 14-2. They repeated. It was John Elway's final game.
Yeah.
He rides off into the sunset. Makes you wonder, though, that Falcons team was great, but I would have really liked to see that Vikings team with that amazing offense and that talent in the Super Bowl. And you look, nobody talks about this. That's why it's on this podcast. But if you go to Minnesota right now and you ask some older Vikings fans, do you remember this 98 team?
Well, of course.
They're going to say they're going to remember.
Yeah.
Like, this team was
Especially
absolutely
if they were around to watch it.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then real last thing before I sign off here.
Real last thing.
Okay.
Well,
The 1999 season.
Oh my goodness.
The next season.
We'll do it all again.
The next season.
We're doing it again.
We're going through the whole history.
Go to the next
You
game.
wanted Slept On Sports. You've got Slept On Sports. Okay, we come here for research. Randall Cunningham, okay, the star of the previous season, he is replaced mid-season by Jeff George. Okay?
Wow.
Who had a good college career but ended up being okay in the NFL.
He's all right.
They go 10-6 that season. They lose to the Rams in the divisional playoffs. Okay, this is the 99 season.
Okay.
Does anybody know who the Rams who was on the Rams team that year in 1999? Once again, this is obviously before your time, but
Torrey Holt.
Oh yeah, who else?
Isaac Bruce.
Yep, who else?
Marshall Faulk.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt
Who's
Warner.
the quarterback?
Kurt Warner.
Does anyone remember what the nickname of this team was called?
Greatest show on turf.
Greatest show
on turf.
That's a good look for me.
That's a great look for you, Brevin. This team won the Super Bowl that year. Okay, the Rams in '99.
Yeah. Back to back.
One of the best offenses ever. Yeah. Well, they almost won 2 years later, but then that opened up the Tom Brady situation when they beat them. But it's funny because the Vikings had arguably the greatest show on turf the year before.
Right.
They lost to the Rams the year after, and the Vikings team gets forgotten, and the Rams team kind of stole their thunder, ended up becoming the greatest show on turf. And then we all think, oh, what's one of the greatest offenses of all time? Everyone says Rams, Warner, Falk, Bruce, Holt. Everyone loves that team. Nobody talks about the Vikings team. So it's kind of interesting to see the Rams kind of stole their thunder, and no one talks about this Vikings team. And it's a shame because I think this Vikings team was unbelievable, and they probably should have played the Broncos. And ultimately, who knows what would have happened? But
well, thank you for the history.
That was impressive.
You really covered a lot of ground.
And can I say, shout out to the Falcons for losing another Super Bowl.
yes,
That's
let's
right.
not forget that.
By the way,
Falcons lost again.
Wait,
Last one.
how many Super Bowls have the Falcons been to, and how many have they lost?
I believe they're 0-2.
I mean, they're 0-2. I don't think that's...
No, they never got to one before. That was actually the first Super Bowl where a team playing in a dome got to the Super Bowl.
Oh.
So before that,
that's
it
a
was
good
always
stat.
like, oh, you can't win in a
the
dome,
guard.
you can't get there.
Right.
So the Falcons
Paving
getting
the
the
way
Super Bowl
for
got
Drew
there.
Brees.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. And obviously
Thank
the
God.
Saints winning it.
Someone had to do it. In
That's
2011.
right. But the Rams, of course, the year after were the first team to win.
That's
Yeah.
in a dome. So.
All right, there we go. 2 men down, 2 NFL teams.
All
Someone
right,
have anything else to talk
I'm gonna move it. I'm gonna move it to the NBA.
Okay, I like it.
Good, because
Um,
that's where I'm going after you.
Perfect. So I'm
Finish
talking
up with the
about.
basketball.
I'm going. You guys. So you 1970s. You're 1990s. I'm going 1980s
Right
here.
in the middle.
Whoa, we're
Going to
way back.
1984-85. So when you think of
Magic Johnson
Yep.
and Larry
Larry
Bird.
Bird.
yeah, so you think of Magic Johnson
Easily.
and Larry Bird, but you also think of rookie Michael Jordan,
That's
Yes.
correct.
Hakeem,
Oh.
John Stockton, Charles Barkley.
How about that?
There's like these are kind of the names that like come to your mind when you're
Frank.
thinking of 1984 and 1985 NBA, right?
There you go.
It was Magic and Larry, as you
So
said.
it's a little early on some of those guys, but they're all around.
Well, yeah.
Well, no, that was the rookie year. They were all drafted that
Yeah,
year.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
The 1984 draft was Hakeem, Stockton, Barkley, Sam Perkins, obviously Jordan, Jerome Kersey. Like it was a really, really good draft.
Right.
Probably the best draft ever. Some people say 1996, but we're not talking about that right now. But yeah, that's so you have that draft class. You have Magic and Larry, and really like those are the main storylines
Yes.
from that season. But what I'm interested in, and I'm a big fan of this one guy, Bernard King, right? So Bernard King.
Can't go wrong there.
Okay.
Bernard King playing for the Knicks at this point, but kind of like a souped-up Carmelo Anthony in a lot of ways, right? He's a scoring small forward, really, really graceful, polished. He has this turnaround fadeaway jumper. He's dynamic in transition, a little more athletic than Carmelo.
Who did he play for?
He played for the Knicks.
King? He played for the Knicks.
He played for the Knicks. He's played for a few different teams, but
I
this
see.
season that I'm talking about, he played for the Knicks. And now, the interesting thing about the Bernard King season, this is what brought me to it, is I knew Bernard King leads the NBA in scoring with 32.9
Does
points
he?
per game. So this is the Larry Bird, Michael Jordan's in the league now, Bernard King's leading the league in scoring. But that's kind of what brought me to the season.
Wow.
And then from there, I kind of go into it with Bernard King a little bit more. So 32.9 points on a career high 23.7 field goal attempts, shooting 53% from the field.
That's amazing.
53% from the field in the pre-efficiency, pre-analytics era.
Right.
Pretty impressive, especially for a kind of not a fully perimeter guy. He had a little bit of a back to the basket, a rise and fire mid-range, wasn't really stretching the floor. But he also got to the line 10 times per game. So I don't have the true shooting numbers on me for this, and obviously true shooting, I can look it up, but true shooting wasn't a factor back then.
Well,
but
right.
this is a very, very efficient season, even by standards of today. And actually, I'll pull it up right now. His true shooting that year was 59%.
Wow.
So like the league average is around 55, 56.
Yeah.
So without the benefit of the three ball, he did not shoot threes.
Yeah.
He still had
No 3 ball.
really efficient season.
On 23 plus attempts.
Yeah. But the crazy part is that Knicks team was absolutely trash,
Wow.
particularly on offense.
That's
They were
crazy.
This is sounding like the Falcons.
Yeah,
How are all of our stories
How does
like
this happen?
melting together?
Yeah, so they have the leading scorer in the NBA on the worst offense in the Eastern Conference, second worst offense overall.
That's crazy.
This guy is dropping 32.9 points per game efficiently and doing it on an absolutely abysmal
That's hilarious.
offense.
Is there anybody else on this team?
That was a great question. And if I will tell you, all right, so Pat Cummings is the second best player on this team.
This is not a good
Pat
sign.
Cummings is a 6'9" center who also averaged a career high that year in scoring for this Knicks team.
What's the number?
The worst offensive it was like, I got to pull it up. It was like 14 points per game or something.
Yeah, this is not
16
good.
points per game. It was like his supporting cast is Pat Cummings, Darrell Walker, and Louis Orr.
All right, can we get a raised hands if anyone's heard of any of these guys?
Besides Darrell Walker and
yeah.
Pat Cummings, no, I don't know who Louis Orr was.
Also,
No.
I like the coaches on this team. Head coach is Hubie Brown.
Oh, yes!
There we go.
And assistant coach is Rick Pitino.
That's amazing.
You gotta be kidding.
Rick
One of you.
Pitino.
So the one
What?
caveat I
Well,
will
Rick Pitino could never make it in the pros.
That's true. The one caveat I will throw out is that King only played 55 games this year, so it's enough to qualify for the scoring title, but obviously had something to do with the Knicks being terrible on offense. But when I read this, I saw, okay, this is the leading scorer in the NBA, 32.9 efficient points, and he's doing it on the worst offense in the Eastern Conference. I wanted to see, has that ever happened before? Has it ever been the case that the top scorer in the league played on the league's worst offense? And so I went through all of them, all the years, at least since the merger, the ABA-NBA merger in 1976, that has never happened. There's never been a case where the NBA's leading scorer was on the worst offense. So Bernard King claims like he's on the second worst offense in basketball. That is the greatest disparity in scoring, individual scoring and team scoring in NBA history. And I just think it's kind of funny because it's a little bit emblematic of the way Bernard King is thought of, the way his career it's a little bit he's probably more revered than like Carmelo now, but that empty calorie scorer that gets thrown around kind of like an Adrian Dantley, Carmelo, like a guy that puts up numbers but doesn't translate
Carmelo
to winning.
is the best contemporary comparison.
I think so.
Definitely.
I think also in body types even look a little bit similar.
Definitely. Because I like that because
And the fact that they played on some terrible Knicks teams.
Yes.
Seriously. And like honestly, the Knicks teams that Carmelo played on at least made it to playoffs.
Yeah.
They at least
A couple-
made it
a couple.
competitive.
They had a couple in the
like
playoffs.
whatever. Like they didn't win, and people are always going to hold that against them. But like that's a very good point. And there are always going to be players like that will put up pretty great numbers, but they just will be forgotten. I mean, Carmelo won't be forgotten about. He'll be in the Hall.
I mean, we're talking Bernard King. He only went to the
Right.
second round of the playoffs once.
Right.
In his entire career.
Crazy. That's crazy.
I mean, you think about a guy like what Brad Beal did this season.
Yeah.
Oh, good point.
But Brad Beal does it. The Wizards have actually a really good offense. The Wizards were pouring in points per game.
Yeah.
The Knicks scored 105 points per game that year. Like,
Yeah.
this is a pretty
Without the
This is-
3-point
no,
shot.
Well,
This
yes.
is 85. I mean,
But this is a pretty good
Crazy.
offensive
Yeah,
era.
yeah.
The 80s were an up and down era.
It drops hard in the
Yeah,
mid-90s.
no, some people
but-
think like, the further you go back, the offense is bad, but it's really the late 90s and the early 2000s.
You're right, because these
are the dead
80s
era.
are like incredible. 'Cause
Up and
then
down
a couple
era.
years
Like,
later-
105 is nothing to be ashamed of in the late 90s.
No. They're
early 2000s.
They're averaging, I think, in the low to mid like 110s. A couple
Yeah.
years later, 2 years later, Jordan will average 37.
Yeah, but Bernard King's getting almost a third of their production.
Yeah.
And one of the worst offenses in basketball. So I just think, because I always think about Bernard King's career and how he's kind of like, there are rumors of like a little bit of like drug problems, addiction issues, but there's also injury issues. Like he got hurt in this year. He's been traded. He moved around to a bunch of different teams. Actually played for 5 different teams. He's kind of one of those guys that's just gets a little bit washed away with history because he didn't win anything and he wasn't consistent. He like I said, there's Larry, there's Magic, Isaiah, Michael Jordan, like all these guys come into the league, and then Bernard King kind of gets forgotten about. But then when you look at some of these seasons, you can see why. Yeah. Like a guy is putting up he leads the league in scoring on one of the worst offenses in basketball, the very worst in the conference.
I mean, how many people care about the Knicks other than when they actually won championships and then when Patrick Ewing was there? That's it.
Yeah, I mean Bernard King is a legend in the city, but it's amazing. He shot .2. I said he didn't shoot any threes. He shot .2 threes per game.
Well, this is
It's
Yeah,
great.
this is 1985. The 3-point, line is only about 5-6 years old at this point.
And he really wasn't a perimeter player. Like he's the height and build of more perimeter guy, but he's really get out in transition. He was mid-range, but mid-range near the paint area. It wasn't like this is Jerry West or something where it's a guy that's shooting a lot but not getting the benefit of the three. It's not like he was taking one step inside the 3-point line and shooting it. Like he was scoring inside kind of as a little bit of an undersized guy. And it's just, I don't know, it's one of those interesting questions because you look at some of these guys, you're like, man, like I would love to see this guy play today. I would love to see this guy play today. Bernard King's game wasn't really, I would really love to see this guy play. Like I mean, I've watched a few of his games, and there's nothing that you see that are like, wow, if you give him the space of today's game, I don't think he really would defend well
Not
enough
a Dr.
at
J
6'7" to be a 4, because he'd be a 4.
Yeah.
It's just kind of, I don't know, it's just one of those guys that I think kind of gets washed away with history and is more of a name than maybe his production. And it just made me think, like, is that something that's going to happen to Carmelo Anthony?
If you were to ask an average Knicks fan, do you think they would have a significant opinion about him?
No.
Really? I don't know.
Average Knicks fan?
No,
I'm not talking about average NBA fan. I'm talking about a Knicks
Bernard
fan.
King's kind of a
Would they
legend
feel
in the
strongly
Garden.
about him?
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they would.
Really? I don't know.
That's the real question.
Like Bernard King, like you think of Bernard King, right? You think of the Knicks, right? He only played 4 years there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think he definitely made a lasting impact on the Knicks themselves. But I just see this season, I think, like, that is emblematic of Bernard King's career. Like, that's his career in a nutshell.
Now, did his injury that prevented him from playing the next season? Was that a
Yes, so that it's not like he was playing, like, in and out of the lineup. He gets injured, misses the rest of the season, then does not play 85, 86.
Yeah.
What I
He
think
still
is,
averages almost 23 points.
what I think is crazy,
Yeah.
because I don't know if are you going to talk about the 1991 season? Because now I'm looking at
He
this.
pops right back.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable because he does. He misses the whole next season due to injury. He plays 6 games the year after that. So he's on the Knicks for 2 more years after the season. Plays a total of 6 games.
Such a weird career.
So you think he's probably washed, right? And obviously he's not dropping 33 points a game. He's down to like 20 points per game for the next few seasons with the Washington Bullets. But then 1990-91, it's his age 34 season, and then out of nowhere he drops another 28.4 points per game. That's an amazing season.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And then he doesn't play the next season.
No, and then he doesn't play the
he
next
doesn't
season
play.
again, and then his career is basically
plays
over.
like-
I mean, but you also, like, you look at that 90-91 season, and it's not like the efficiency.
No,
is
the
not
level of
even
efficiency
close.
is not there. But that's another season where he just all of a sudden he's back.
Yeah, and
Right?
he's back, but he's still, it's the same story. He's playing on another
how many
team.
times?
that's
How many times? Yeah, it's a
another, like, this team. The
It's a good
Bullets
call.
were 30 and 52.
It's a good call, but how many times does a guy, in his mid-30s, he hasn't been an All-Star in 6 years, and then he makes another All-Star team?
He's also a movie star. In 1979,
Underrated.
he plays one of the characters in Fast Break.
Wow.
And that Bullets team, second worst in the conference in points per game.
Unbelievable.
It's just another case of, like, all right, the offense is bad. Let's just give Bernard all the touches. And then so it's a chicken egg scenario. Is Bernard King making these offenses bad by getting all these touches, or are the offenses bad so they're like, all right, let's go to our best guy. Let's go to our
I think
professional
it's a
scorer.
little more questionable in the 90-91 season, but obviously his efficiency is very good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
In 85,
He
which
shot-
means the rest of the team is just really bad.
He shot 30. He got 33 points per game on efficient shooting, and they still have a terrible offense.
Which is, it's unbelievable.
And like I said, that's Pat Cummings is leading his best year. That's the most points per game he's ever had.
Yeah.
So Pat Cummings has 15.8 points per game. That's the best year of his career. It's the best year of Bernard King's career.
And the Knicks go 24 and 58.
It's
Oh,
real.
God.
It really is.
Again.
At least he's in the Hall of Fame.
It's remember I said Louis Orr?
Yeah,
Highest scoring year of his career too.
of course it is.
I mean, it's just a case of, I guess it's a bad team. Like, these guys get more touches. Bernard King gets hurt, so it's going to help these guys' scoring averages a little bit. But it's amazing to see this season and just how that works out. And I was shocked because I was just looking at, like, all right, I thought when I was researching this, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to just talk about Bernard King in this one incredible year he has in the era of Jordan and Bird, and then I'm just going through the offense, like the overall team stats, and it's just like that really struck me. And it's kind of funny. It's similar to what you guys were doing more at a team level, especially yours with Connor with the defense versus the offense. But it's just like, wow.
Yeah, but I mean that's just how it goes sometimes. You have some players that they're very good individual players, and they get stuck on these teams. Like Devin Booker. Is Devin Booker ever going to make the playoffs? Like, who even knows at this point, right?
I don't think in Phoenix is. Yeah, it's. But then there's also a question of like how valuable was Bernard King at the time? Like this guy, he's on 5 different teams,
right?
So it's not like anyone's viewing Bernard King as an untradeable asset. It kind of does remind me of Adrian Dantley because Adrian Dantley had a very similar thing.
Right, because he wins some scoring titles and then he goes to the Pistons.
Yeah, in that 1980-1981 Utah, that team was terrible on offense, and he was the leading scorer. That was the season most similar to King's, and I think they kind of have similar games. And I think Adrian Dantley, his name recognition might even be a little bit lower.
Yeah, I think someone could do an episode on Dantley. Dantley, just looking at it now, he goes 4 years in a row, averaging more than 30 points per game in the early '80s.
Played on 7 teams.
It's
just another case of like I know this is the pre-efficiency era, right? Yeah. But these are the type of guys that lead to the efficiency era because these guys are putting up huge points per game. Dantley's leads the league in scoring twice, as you said.
And Dantley,
and he gets traded around. It shows you that even before like the executives knew that what to value, they were valuing the efficiency. They were valuing the contributions to winning. They don't see Adrian Dantley and think.
And by the way, all of these Adrian Dantley seasons that he averages more than 30 points per game, he shoots better than 55% every year.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable.
And
it's actually unbelievable.
And they still don't win.
And again, this guy, you're like, if he was Shaq, that's one thing. Adrian Dantley is 6'5".
Yeah.
He's averaging. He is shooting like 56, 57, 58%. 1 year.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
6'5".
But it just shows like undersized guys driving to the basket for twos, even before people knew this isn't what you want all the time. It wasn't what the GMs want. Like Adrian Dantley, Bernard King, they were on 12 different teams between them, and it's just I don't know. It's very
Bernard King. He scored 19,600 points. Like I mean, this guy
barely healthy. Missed a couple prime years.
That's the thing. He missed
normally 20,000 points. That's a Hall of Fame career right there.
Yeah.
Like Antoine Jameson hit 20,000 points. People are like, is Antoine Jameson a Hall of Famer?
Now he did have some off the field issue.
That's what he dealt with some substance abuse, and I think that almost contributes to his legend at this point.
Yeah.
He also did appear. He was also in Miami Vice for a little bit.
Was he really?
Yes.
It's my dad's favorite show of all time.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
It's it every night. That's
Miami Vice.
My God.
And he was also inducted to the Hall of Fame the same year as Rick Pitino. So, assistant coach.
He just never.
That's hilarious.
He never ends.
I would love to think they met up and talked about that 85 year and said, you know what, we made it.
Yeah, remember that, guys?
We made it. We were terrible.
Remember, we have a Hall of Fame scorer, Hall of Fame coach
on a 24-win basketball team.
Do you think they have a reunion with Hubie Brown?
I have no idea.
Maybe every Thanksgiving.
I cannot answer that.
I
cannot
every Thanksgiving. I have not been to a Hubie Brown Thanksgiving.
I don't think
I have no idea.
I don't think that's a team that warrants a reunion.
No, not so much.
I think
they don't need to remember.
I think the 77 Falcons are probably have more of a likelihood of having a reunion than the 85 Knicks.
Oh my God.
I mean, I don't know. I think Louis Orr would be down for a reunion.
Yeah, Louis Orr's like, that was my best year.
That was my best year, man.
You're not a real Knicks fan unless you remember
Pat
Louis
Cummings, I think he'd be down for a reunion.
Oh my God.
I think all these guys would be down.
Well, keep it up.
I mean, there we go. Yeah, so we got two footballs, another basket, one basketball. Brandon, keep the train moving.
There we go. Keep the train moving.
First team All NBA, by the way, that year.
That's unbelievable.
Keeping up with the basketball theme, we're going to transition a little bit. I'm not going to give a whole history lesson on the NBA like Mike did with the NFL, but we'll keep it.
I gave a 98 history lesson.
You did.
A little 99.
I think we mentioned about half of the NFL rosters from 1998.
That was
you didn't know that Dan Reeves almost died from.
That is an amazing tidbit.
Yeah, no, you just did the same show off my
Not great for Dan Reeves, mind you.
And I let Brevin get smart.
That's a big deal.
Go ahead.
All right.
You want to tell us about the 06 of the 2019
you want to throw it back?
Warriors?
The 2016 Warriors. We don't need. We don't need to reminisce about that. No. So what I am focusing on is the idea of endorsements in the NBA, the significance of them, and how they actually have completely changed in the modern era compared to where they were back, say in the 90s, say Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan, we know, one of the most famous athletes.
Michael? I know Michael.
Right?
I know Michael Jackson. I'm very aware of Michael Jackson.
The actor Michael B.
No.
Is this Michael B. Jordan?
So think about this, Michael.
I loved him in Creed.
No, sorry, Black Panther first.
Fair enough.
Come on. Yeah,
Creed was technically first.
This is a sports podcast.
Creed was technically first.
This is a sports
It
podcast.
was first, but
I'm trying to talk about Creed.
All right, what's your topic?
Okay, so here's my point. Michael Jordan, one of the most famous athletes of all time, also one of the wealthiest athletes of all time.
Both of those things are true. Yeah.
Yes.
How much money do you think this man, Michael Jordan, made in endorsements?
Well, he's like a billionaire now.
Exactly. $1.7 billion. How many athletes can you think of that have made over $1 billion worth of endorsements?
Probably like one. Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan, right?
LeBron's gonna be next.
So here's what I'm saying with LeBron James. So LeBron James has played even longer than Michael Jordan has.
This is true.
Yet he's made half as much money.
That's interesting.
How does that make any sense whatsoever? Considering the fact
What are we
that
talking about? Just through Jordan's playing career?
Right. Well, it's over the course of his life, right? Because he's worth $1.7 billion.
Yeah.
But if you think
I mean,
about,
he's lived 20 years old.
he's made the
lived
majority.
20
He
years
played 15 years, like actually, like
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
yeah. If you're not including the retirements and things
Baseball.
like that. Right, baseball and all that stuff, right? But he's made half as much. So LeBron's made half as much. So why do you think that is?
Well, he's lived half his life.
Well, that's also true. He's a lot younger. He will potentially get to that point, but will he ever eclipse that?
Yeah, I think he's going to make $1 billion. I don't know if he's going to make more than Jordan.
He's not going to make more than Jordan.
He
I
won't.
don't think anyone will.
Because of Air Jordan and because of how successful that's
Yeah.
been. Primarily. And there's all the other endorsements too. But here's something even more interesting. Someone like Michael Jordan, who played obviously in the 90s, but I mean he played longer than that, but we know him from the 90s. All of his endorsements ultimately came throughout the course of his career, but the real money came after he retired. Because that was the mindset of athletes at the time. They didn't really think about, they want to make their money at the time just based off of the things that people are telling them. The teams and obviously their corporate sponsors are just kind of pushing it in their face. They're not really thinking, I need to invest in this and I need to do that. Completely different culture over time. Players like Kevin Durant now, and here's where I'm going with this. He partners with this guy named Rich Kleiman, right?
Okay.
He's a lifelong friend. He's been talking with this guy. He's been hanging out with this guy.
Is this a real friend or is this like a Stephen A.
It's a
Smith?
real guy.
He's a dear friend.
It's a dear friend of mine. So Kevin Durant, Rich Kleiman, they link up sometime after Kevin Durant is. Well, I mean, they've known each other for their whole lives, but for their whole lives. And eventually, Kevin Durant obviously goes to Golden State, Silicon Valley. And a lot of people speculated that a big reason why he picked Golden State over Boston, which was supposedly the second choice, or if he wanted to stay in Oklahoma City and just get paid, right, is because he wanted to move into tech. He wanted to invest in tech companies. Like Iguodala. So, as soon as he got to Golden State, what year did he get there, by the way?
2016.
Summer of 2016.
2016.
July 4th.
Not even down to the day.
Right.
It was the 4th of July, 2016.
And
You ruined my holiday.
Sorry.
Celebratory.
we would expect nothing less from the
playing
basketball mind
basketball,
of Brevin Fleischer.
I remember where it was.
Exactly.
So he gets there in 2016. Immediately starts working with Rich Kleiman towards making significant investments in the tech industry right there. What company do you think he invested in 2016?
Give me a hint.
Any company?
35 Ventures.
Yeah, there's actually a ton of them.
There's-
Let me narrow it down a little bit.
His own company.
What?
35 Ventures was out of that.
What major food delivery company do you think he delivered?
He's DoorDash. No, he's the other one.
Uber Eats.
Postmates.
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 In the same year, this is not a coincidence. In the same
Why did I know
year
that
he goes to the Bay, he makes this major investment in Postmates because him and Rich actually are sitting, literally just hanging out, and all of a sudden, Rich is like, "Hey, there's this thing called Postmates that'll literally just deliver food from any restaurant." It's back in 2016. Think about what we were thinking.
Yeah,
about
no, I
in
remember
2016.
when we were freshmen in college, like post. I didn't. I hadn't heard of
a
Postmates
different
before.
world.
Right.
They were like somebody wanted Gatorade because we were playing some intramural sports. Like, oh, just Postmates, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
and then KD was like, come on, Brad.
Come on, Brevin, Postmate.
And that's why I know off the top of my head that KD
You were a
invested
freshman in
in Postmates.
2016.
I mean,
Yeah.
side note.
Yeah, we were.
Side note: if you ever get the opportunity to become business partners with a man named Rich,
Rich.
I think you should take it.
Smart.
That's a very good.
I think you should take it.
Also, Kevin Durant owns some stake in the Philadelphia Union right now.
He does.
He does.
Make that clear.
He's made an investment. LeBron James has made investments in teams as well.
That's right.
Liverpool.
Liverpool, yeah.
You know, just
Yeah,
some
little
little Champions League winning.
It's a bit overblown, but yes, he does have some stake.
He has some stake. We're not going to say he's a majority owner because he's not even close.
He's not.
But he has.
Because I would lie.
That would just be an outright lie.
He'll tweet random, he'll never walk along.
Slept on Sports is a factually accurate podcast.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want to get the Medill F.
So
That'd be bad.
my bigger point here, and even though like that's incredibly interesting, it's fascinating that KD gets into this, and you would think that would make him a ton of money, which it did, right? He actually made his profit from that investment was tenfold over the course of the past 4 years.
Yeah, it's only been 4 years.
I mean, it's only been 4 years. So imagine if someone like Michael Jordan, who literally just made all the money that he did just based off of just his pure talent and not really actually, taking any initiative when it came to this stuff. Not saying that he wasn't focusing on the endorsement.
Yeah, I think Michael Jordan's
But
done some pretty good stuff.
he definitely did, but for the most part, it was really just the deals that were put together for him. It wasn't like he worked with people in his camp, but it's different now. With people like LeBron working with Maverick
There are
Carter.
plenty of current athletes that definitely have that mindset of
Definitely.
Yeah.
they're
it's-
using their value of their brand.
Dinwiddie, even Iguodala, these are role players at this point who did the same type of thing.
Good point.
Yeah, and it's completely transformed the mindset. And even someone like KD, who went through this, like he's invested. Guess how many companies he's invested in?
38.
Close.
35.
Oh, do you have
35.
Do you have the direct number? 42.
50.
gonna
He's
say
invested in 50 companies.
That's a lot.
And he's made $30+ million a year. He's been one of the highest paid athletes in the whole flipping league and in the whole country, in the whole world.
Yeah.
And he's still only worth $170 million.
How old is he?
He is 32 years old.
32.
32 years old.
But
that's crazy. I find that so crazy that even with this change in mindset and the fact that the two biggest players, at least in popularity, I mean Steph Curry's up there now too, and he'll definitely he'll continue to catch up financially because he's the highest paid year-over-year player now. But I think that's interesting.
And LeBron's at like half a billion right now.
Yes.
So they're all 3 years apart. So
Yes.
KD's got a ways to go.
He's got some work to do.
Yeah.
I think it's nice to see the athletes that are like planning their futures out because obviously you're not going to play forever.
Yeah.
I mean the NBA contracts, depending on who you are, can be very beneficial to you.
Yep.
Compared to other leagues, but
It's all guaranteed money.
Right. And so you have the situation where you want to prepare for the future, and to see Durant doing that, it's very, very smart. I mean, the show Ballers came out like a few years ago, and that's kind of going around that same idea, like, oh, you need to invest as an athlete, because a lot of times athletes might just say, I'm going to play, and then that's it. But what happens when the clock strikes zero? What happens when you're done? So if you can invest and start to prepare for your future when you're playing in your career, I mean, that's just absolutely massive.
It seems like a no-brainer.
It does, but not.
And yet so many people don't even think about it.
People do,
Right.
Well, and you think of guys like Rob Gronkowski that said his whole career he was going to play off the endorsement money.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Rob Gronkowski has done a fantastic job, and now he's back in the NFL.
He's on
Yeah.
tons of shows.
But he had done a
Tons of-
fantastic job
Yeah.
at promoting his brand, and now that's starting kind of a new generation of players that are thinking much financially smarter, and they're making a lot of these.
And that's why
good
it gets
decisions.
annoying when fans are like blame players for taking the money, or a guy wants like LeBron years ago.
Yeah.
LeBron took pay cut after pay cut to form that first of the like that. He was underpaid obviously with the Cavs. He's on his rookie deal. Then he gets his rookie extension, so he's still underpaid relative to the best players in the league. Then he goes to the Heat, and he's taking a little bit of a pay cut so that Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade, everybody can get paid. And then like fans get mad at LeBron when LeBron's like, now I want to have my full contract. And it's like, well, you know what? These guys, if they play a really long time, they're retiring at 35, and then you hope you're living 50 more years after that. Like, it's not like most people retire at 65.
Yeah.
So sure, they're not making as much money, but you're making money throughout that entire time. Like these guys have 50 more years, and when you do this, you're trying to take care of a lot of people. You're not just about you; it's about your kids. It's about their kids. So I mean, it's definitely really good to see. I mean, obviously, we wish that we could.
Right. I mean,
We wish we
I wish
could.
Katie would bring me under his wing. I'd love to join 35 Ventures. I still wouldn't root for him. I still would not root for him.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, some people don't have sympathy for the athletes because it's like, oh, look at all the money you're making and blah, blah, blah. But like, I mean, think of an NFL running back. You're
used
done.
and abused.
The things that they do
You're done
for their team.
I mean, literally, it keeps getting younger and younger. Now
every year.
Really, at the end of anybody's first contract, you look at the running back and you say he's 26. Well, who wants a 26-year-old running back?
Yeah.
Like Devontae Freeman was out of the league.
Which is ridiculous.
He got paid.
Devontae Freeman was very good.
And then out of the league.
And it becomes dangerous because you get hurt. It now becomes a situation where it's like, I can't get hurt because if I get hurt,
It's a liability.
they're just going to find someone else.
Exactly.
And then you're done. And
I'll go to the fourth round and I'll get Kareem Hunt.
Right. I mean, and it's just...
I'll find Devin Singletary in the draft. Like it's just
Yeah, but
you get replacement level running backs.
And that's the problem though. You turn 31, 32, and everyone says you're old.
The clock
But like
starts ticking.
in the world of everything else,
You're just starting your career.
Very young. And so I mean I'm 28 and I don't think I'm old.
You're almost past your prime, Mike. Mike, this is the clock.
You got to be Brandon
Your
Weeden. You're not
dreams
getting
to become an
drafted.
NFL running back
Yes,
are over.
I think I'm
You're
too old
over.
to be an NFL running back.
It's all done now.
That's the number one thing that's holding me back. Is that I'm too old.
And don't tell it to Frank Gore, though.
That's right. Hey, Frank Gore.
Mr.
Hey, I mean, Frank Gore.
37-year-old
Frank Gore's been. I swear, Frank Gore's been bad for 15 years.
That's true.
Never telling me.
I had no choice. I picked them up this week, and
Oh,
this
God.
is what happens when you have
He is
no
the starting
running
running back. To be fair, he's not playing for a real football team.
That's
he's
true.
playing for the Jets.
That's true. Well, Yahoo literally said the odds of him getting any points are slim because the Jets will not get in the red zone. So I mean,
It's fair.
And it's true.
Unless you get one of those explosive Frank Gore runs that we.
You never know. I'm hoping.
I mean, a really explosive Frank Gore run is good for about 6 or 7 years.
I mean, he might be allowing me to get a Gibson steak at this point. Who knows? But that's the thing, though. It's like you turn 32, 33. You realistically still have like 50 years of life left.
That's not-
What are you gonna do? So like,
Yeah.
you need to prepare for that.
Yeah, so it's for
doesn't-
monetary purposes, but it's also for expanding your mind, hobby, having something to do outside of sports.
That's true.
Like
It
because
gives
That's
them
a good point.
something
That's underrated.
That's actually a really good point.
Like,
it can be.
not
It's your
just
next
the
grind.
finances. It's
Yeah.
literally your
A lot of times,
career
people
beyond.
These guys are-
a lot of times with professional athletes and similar people, they spend their entire lives working, every day so diligently, so hard to be
You
the
need
best in
an
the world
outlet
at
for that,
something.
yeah.
And then you retire, and you need to find the new grind.
Well, we talked about this today. We were watching The Jump, right? And Matt
Yeah.
Barnes is on there.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, remember Matt Barnes?
That's what he
And,
does
He
now.
has found his way.
Sacramento Kings legend.
I mean, of course, right? And he found himself on TV. If you're a competent ex-athlete and you want to get into the sports entertainment industry and you want to be on ESPN and stuff, you can essentially do
Or you
it.
can just be
How about
Kendrick Perkins and Paul
Perkins?
Pierce.
You can be-
You don't even need to be competent.
That's true.
Yes. Paul Pierce, interesting takes.
I was going to say Paul Pierce. That's a bit,
All the time,
I would
yes.
say confidence is a bit of a stretch for him. Kendrick
Yes.
Perkins too. That's very.
Kendrick Perkins
Yeah.
is a good one. I mean, he's on first take literally every day. Does he actually have anything good to
They
say?
brought Kendrick Perkins was the number one guy they brought in to discuss the finals. On
Yeah,
on Monday.
I mean,
they bring him
literally.
a lot, yeah.
It's like when
Yeah.
Charles Barkley does March Madness.
Oh
Yeah.
my! Just throw
And he
the
hasn't
ball over there.
hasn't watched a game all year.
with
but
half the charm.
Yes, but I would much rather listen to Sir Charles talk
Yeah.
about whatever the hell he wants as opposed to
Absolutely.
Kendrick Perkins. I would
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, I agree with that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Kendrick Perkins isn't coming on the pod, guys.
That's being said, Kendrick, if you're listening, which I'm sure you could be.
Yeah.
You are definitely invited on. We could really use some name recognition.
No, that'd be nice.
Kendrick Perkins, please come on and roast us all. I think that'd
That's
be fun.
fine.
He does have good metaphors.
Yeah.
He does. That is one thing you have to give
And
him.
he
Honestly.
keeps it real too.
Yeah,
he
I don't
definitely
care.
keeps it.
If it
I
leads to
appreciate
me,
He keeps it his real.
I will gladly,
his version of
He
it.
keeps it.
I will gladly be roasted and embarrassed nationally if it allows the podcast to grow. So like I'm fine with
It's
that.
the first episode. We only go up from here, Mike.
That is true. You can't go back.
Speaking of growing the podcast, as you see how I do the segue?
No.
Do the segue. Slept on Sports. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter. You can listen anywhere you get the podcast.
What's the Twitter handle?
Within reason. It's going to be at @slept_on_sports.
I like it.
I came up with the title.
The ideal Twitter handle was taken, unfortunately.
If you want more history,
threw a couple underscores in there.
Provide
Mike was a teacher.
Says the former history teacher.
History
Mike
teacher.
Tyrrell.
In a familiar position, schooling us on.
That is right.
the
Don't
past.
worry.
No, it was very educational. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that was really good.
That's good.
So we're gonna, keep these up regularly. Got some good, stories from the past, lesser known things. Like I hope you guys have learned something today. Try to bring on some more people, get some more stuff going. And anything else? Anyone got anything else to say?
No, I think this is gonna turn into something good. Like I said, this is not a show. This is not a podcast about stuff that you can just easily, know off the top of your head. I think this is stuff that you might not know, or stuff that is kind of out there
that you just never thought about.
That you never thought about, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. Whether it's players like Bernard King, or whether it's teams like the '77 Falcons, or whether it's just concepts like this idea of athletes and investments and how their futures are going to work out, like Kevin Durant. I think it's going to be something that can go in the right direction. So we'll see what obviously happens down the road, but I'm excited to keep sharing as long as people want to hear it.
Even if they don't.
Even if they don't, I will
There's
still
something here for you.
do it. If there's one person, I will do it. If there's negative 2 people, I will do it.
We'll do it for ourselves.
You one person out there.
Yes.
He's talking to you.
That's right. I want to hear myself talk.
Mike Tyrrell is single.
That's right. I am out
Nice.
there. I have a Tinder.
Ready to
please.
He's getting too old for it.
I am a little too old for that.
He's in the 28.
I think Hinge is the better option for me, but that's okay.
That's for a different pod.
That's pretty sick.
That's for a different pod. Yeah.
Next week
Yeah,
on Slept on Sports.
Yeah.
we will do a dating
Sports, the
pod.
most underrated dating app.
Hey, I will say, if you want to take a girl out on a date,
Oh my goodness.
Or anyone of any gender.
that is right. That's anyone at all, and you want to go on a date with them, go
Tapas.
to a tapas restaurant. Okay.
Take it from Mike.
Beautiful food.
But do not go on the same day as your fantasy football draft.
That's again another topic for another
We will not
time.
speak of that.
Yeah.
We will not speak of that one. That's a very good point. Do not go when you're drafting a fantasy football team, because it's not going to end well for you, as I learned in the year 2017.
All right.
On that incredibly informative note, thanks everyone for listening. And again, like we said, remember to follow, tell your friends if you did enjoy the podcast, and hopefully we will see you very soon. Thank you and good night.
See you guys.